Hi, everybody. Welcome back to SaaS Founder Stories. Today, I have Kyle Clements, the CEO and co-founder of Quipli, on the show. He's going to be chatting with us a little bit about his company, origin story, and then he's going to be chatting about how they have reduced churn. And I'm really excited to hear about that because I think that's an often overlooked aspect of software companies. So welcome to the show, Kyle.
Hey, Dave, excited to be on. It's much easier, I think, to be the guest than the host. So you got the hard job today. I'll just answer your questions.
I love it. And for the record, Kyle runs his own podcast, and we would suggest that anybody who's looking to get some reach and authority in their space, start a podcast, because that's how you immediately get to reach out and chat with amazing people. So Kyle, tell me a little bit about Quipli.
Sure. So we started Quipli in 2020, so about four and a half years ago. We're focused on the equipment rental market. So there's about 10,000 rental companies in the United States. United, Home Depot, Sunbelt are the big ones. But 100 players are 50% of the market. The other 9,900 are the other 50%. There's a long tail of independent rental companies. That's the market we serve. It's a vertical software company. But the origin story is starting Quipli. I've been in software companies for 10 years, worked at Uber previously, and I was trying to rent something online summer 2020. So COVID, lockdown, and from a national player. And the online renting experience was pretty terrible. And I was like, there's no way this is what a national player is doing. So I started looking at the small independent rental companies, and you're lucky if you find a website. They definitely didn't have e-commerce at that time. So started talking to rental companies, cold called hundreds, and just learned about the market. We started building a product. So enabling rental companies to do online transactions. We had about 10 customers doing that in 2021. And the feedback we were getting was, wow, this is great. Customers love to rent online, but can you build the full system of record for us? So that's where we really had some more explosive growth. So now we have hundreds of rental companies in the United States, hundreds of thousands of transactions every year, hundreds of $1 million come through the system every year. And for us, it's really the one system a rental company needs to run their business. It's the first thing they turn on in the morning, last they turn off at night. It's a system of record. It really is the core sort of operational system that a rental company uses to run their business. So payments, service and repair, accounting, the website integration, communications, and the CRM, it's all integrated into one cloud-based modern platform. But it really just started with me trying to rent something. I've rented something maybe twice in my life. I often, in our podcast, I have less experience than anyone who comes on it in the rental industry. I'm a software person who just sort of stumbled into the rental industry, and it's been a few years now. So I like to know, I feel like I know a little bit more about the industry, but it was really just something I stumbled into just from a personal experience myself.
So that's an interesting one because there's like those two paths, right? There's the path where the founder has like deep experience in that industry, like you were running a rental company and you needed a thing. And so the other one, which I think is really interesting and often overlooked, is where somebody like experiences a frustration in trying to do something is like, what's wrong with these companies? How can I help them? What's your advice for a founder who was like you on that side of the fence going into starting up a software company?
Yeah. Well, even just before we talk about this, I love that we're not talking if we sell a company one day, 10 years from now, right? We're talking about like, this is recent, so I can still think about it. We haven't made it yet, right? I just remember in 2020 talking to rental companies, and they were like, no one will do online renting. We can't put prices online. It's never going to work, right? And if I had just left it there, I think we quickly would have never started. But what I ended up doing was like, all right, let me actually talk to the end user. Let me talk to the renters. So I went on Craigslist and I did user testing, and I connected with the contractors and the homeowners who were doing rental equipment. And you ask them, I say, hey, how would you like to rent? Well, I got to call my guy and I got to do these things. And I was like, well, what if you could go on your phone and 3 clicks request a rental reservation, have it dropped off at your house? Would you use that? Oh my God, that'd be amazing. Right. So it's funny, like if I had just stopped at the, our customer, which is the rental company, we would have never done this. But if you go to their customer and say, hey, how can they better serve you? Well, they told you right there. So I think that was interesting, is like, keep going further. A lot of like startup success, it's not that you have an original idea or anything. It's a lot of that's just grit and just keep going. Right. So early on, just the curiosity to keep asking questions on the 5 whys, keep going deeper. That was a key unlock for us early on.
I think that's really interesting because it's like I heard it called third box thinking, right? And so it's like I'm building a product for you. So I think, oh, you have a problem. And so I'm trying to solve a problem that you have. But when you're looking at a company or a customer and you can do what you did and say, hey, well, what about the people that are actually trying to buy off this person? If they have a problem, and we solve that for them, how much better would it be for the business? And so now when you even into your like sales cycle, what you're looking at is going, hey, Kyle, this software, yeah, it's going to take your business online, but what it's really going to do is actually solve this problem for your customer, which is they're trying to rent your stuff and can't get it.
Exactly. And some of those problems, if you look at the market from a macro level, you won't see that, right? You got to go really deep with the customer. Like our number one value is customer obsession. You have to understand your customers better than they understand themselves in a sense, because those problems that they deal with, sometimes they don't communicate them because they don't really understand them themselves. A lot of it is like, when I was early on, I was like, how can I spend as much time with customers as possible? Because I'm not from this industry, right? And anytime I was bored, I didn't know what to do. I just talked to customers, right? Because I think if you spend enough time with customers, those pain points will bubble up, and you want to build a product that's a painkiller, not a vitamin, right? And I think spending time with customers can't be overstated.
Yeah, I think that's really interesting. One of the things that we did with Arkeo right off the bat, I think we're like at 150, 120 customer interviews already in a year.
Mhm.
And like every chance we get, it's that's the focus. And it's not like, oh, how does it work for you? It's like, hey, what's going on in your business right now that's really challenging? What's stopping you from getting to this next stage of growth? And if you could like get help with one thing, what is it in your business? Because I think the more that you have that, say, 30,000-foot view of what's happening in their company, the more you can see that pattern recognition and actually begin to be like, oh, you know what, if we did this over here, it's going to like totally unlock this whole piece of their company. That's super cool, man. So let's chat about churn. I'm super excited to hear this. So set this up for where you guys were at and what you did.
Yeah, so I think the question you asked me was like, what's one of the biggest problems we've dealt with in the last year and how we approached it? And churn, customer retention, that's never done. It's not like we've checked the box and we're on to the next thing, right? It's an ongoing thing. The software's ongoing. But I think early on for us, like, we're a system of record company. So for us to get to 90% logo retention, that's a 10-year customer. And 94% logo retention is a 17-year customer. And that's a really powerful business and allows us to have cash to invest into R&D and to ultimately serve our customers better. So it's actually in everyone's interest if Quipli has high retention numbers. It's also very painful to switch softwares for us. So because it is the operating system for these rental companies. So if they have to switch softwares after 18 months, that's bad for them. It's bad for everyone. So early on, our overall retention numbers weren't really that great. And, you look at it, and if an investor looked at it, they would say, this is not a great business. But if you start cohorting and looking at the segments, you go, okay, this segment's bad. But this segment, there's some gold here. You're already at 90% logo retention, and you're not even focused on this group, right? So when we would have churn customers, it's really painful because like our operations team feels that I hate when it happens, and we'd like try to work harder and save them. And like the answer isn't to work harder and to build more custom features, right? It was really around going top of funnel and segmenting better. So for us, early on, we had event rental, we had boat rental, we had ATV rental, and we had equipment rental. And underneath that, we also had startups and small companies and mid-sized companies. And you start crossing over the matrices and looking at the different numbers. And we found that like equipment rental companies who are doing at least $300,000 to $500,000 a year of revenue, like that is a core customer segment that we can do really well in. And so summer 2023, we made the hard call and said, we're not working with event rental or boat rental, et cetera. And if you're a startup, we won't work with you either. And that was a hard decision to make because you're turning away paying customers. And what we found was pretty much overnight, looking at that customer segment, retention numbers skyrocketed. And it just feels better. We can focus more on those customers. So the product gets better and better for that segment. So I think one thing I learned that I wish I learned earlier on was around ICP, ideal customer profile, and really understanding the customer segment that you want to own and do really well in. And as an early company, you don't always know. And I don't think it was a mistake to try 5 different segments, but like to learn. But at some point, you got to pick your bet. And I think, we had a board member who helped us with this. And I feel very fortunate that we've sort of nailed this. And now for the last 12 months, we've just been executing. And it's really fun because it's working. But there was a moment you look in the mirror and go, okay, you're going to tell us we're going to turn off half of our marketing leads and we're going to turn away all these customers. And there's like a leap of faith element to it. And, we did that, but, just really segmenting top of funnel better, like that is the game changer for improving our retention numbers.
So there's two things in there because I think the overlooked part that a lot of founders have is that ideal customer profile. And if you ask them what their ideal customer profile is, they usually tell you what they want it to be. They
Mm-hmm.
don't tell you what it actually is. And so that's actually one of the first agents we built, because we're like, if you're selling to a customer, you got to know exactly who they are and where they fit into your business. And so I think that's one of the coolest things. How did you go about actually figuring out who your ideal customer was? Because that's a process that I think a lot of founders don't actually know how to do, or have never had to do.
Yeah. I think actually for us, that was the easier part. The harder part was the stomach and the gut to just commit to it. Like, I think I knew this for a long time, but you want to hit your wins, you want to hit your monthly numbers, and it's fun to sign customers. What's not fun is 12 months later when they churn. And there's a delayed gratification. So I think it's like looking at the metrics, looking at the numbers, and it's just cohorting, like, and maybe you make 3 segments and that's not the right cohort. So you redo it. But essentially you keep slicing and dicing it until you get to the point where you got to 90% logo retention. And then you circle that and we go, let's dominate that niche. Right. And for us, very quickly, it was established equipment rental companies. And then part of the thing is that I didn't mention is like, well, how do you really target them? Well, then all your marketing is around them, right? We talked about our podcast. It's the equipment rental. It's the rental roundtable. We only bring on equipment rental companies onto our podcast, right? Because that's who we're talking to. The other part of this is pricing as well. So we're doing month-to-month payments. With an annual contract, we move forward to annual payments, $6,000 per location per year. It's on our website. But that price point, we also found that you sort of cut out the tire kickers who are thinking of starting it, but they really want to do month to month and they end their contract midterm. So I think the pricing element is too. So it all comes together to really segment and dominate really the niche you want to be in. And, I'm happy that a year later, we're seeing the numbers and it's fun because the numbers are keep going up. And it's really around the ICP classification, but also pricing accordingly. So you can price out the customers that you don't want to serve.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting side, because lots of times people they don't really see that pricing has that effect.
Yeah.
There's that evolution in startups where it's like, we just need to get everybody we possibly can in here.
Mm-hmm.
And then you move into, okay, we're going to run this like a business. It's going to be an actual company. And now we're looking at pricing. How does pricing affect? I love the whole thing of the annual, because I bet your cost of acquisition is paid back almost immediately on that one as well, which is like really beautiful if you think about it. And when you go month to month, again, that's the other flip side of it. Maybe it takes 4 or 5 months for you to pay back the cost of acquisition. Is that something that you played into that annual contract value for you guys as well?
Yeah, obviously, like getting paid up front helps with cash flow. No doubt about that at all. I would say that was actually secondary for us. I think the question we were trying to solve was like, how do we price our product for this segment that gets us to 90+% logo retention? And we did different testing, and for whatever reason, it was $5,000-$6,000 per year. Once you pay that and you pay it up front, that's a committed customer who has the cash to pay it. They're bought into using your service. It's just skin in the game. I can't explain why it is, and that's the testing part. And I think I've heard from other CEOs as well. Once you get to about that $5,000 a year price point, you really on the low end, you really start to price out the guys who's got. For us, it's 2 trailers and they're thinking about starting, and like that's just not a good long-term customer for us. So we weren't trying to maximize profit, revenue, or cash flow. Like those are secondary things. It's really around how do we maximize logo retention? What's the price point we need to be at? And it's something we just tested over time. And we started low and we kept raising the price until we got to a point that it got to that 90-94% level. So it sort of depends on what you're solving for. And for us, a sticky vertical software company, it's all around the long-term recurring revenue. So that's why we're so focused on the retention numbers.
Yeah. Very, very cool. Well, that always was one of my favorite conversations, talking about pricing. So we could go on for hours and hours on that. But what's the one takeaway from that experience, that like the whole churn experience, that you pass on to founders to make, the one lesson that helps them not spend as much time as you did in it, or the learning that you got from it? What's the big one?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's okay to have bad churn early on. You're going to. If you look at the aggregate, it was like 75% logo retention. That's not very good, right? But we quickly got to that 90-94% level. I think the one takeaway is churn actually starts top of funnel, not bottom of funnel. So people think like, if you have a customer who wants to churn, you do the save tactics and all these things, maybe you didn't have good customer support. That's actually the wrong problem, the wrong question to ask. Go top of funnel. Who are you targeting? How are you marketing to them? How are you pricing your contracts? Like solve that and everything else becomes easier. So that's the one takeaway I didn't think about, because for a while I was like spinning my wheels. How do we do whatever we can to retain these customers? And like, you've already lost if you're asking that question. So if I start a second company one day, I will go back to top of funnel. who are we targeting? How are we messaging to them? How are we pricing it? That's how you solve churn issues and retention issues. It's by going to the very top of who you letting come into your funnel to begin with.
Very cool. Okay, so final question. What's the one thing that we could help you with through the network?
I mean, I think now that our product's working and we're repeatable go to market and, our product continuing to iterate, I love the product side of things. That's where I spend a lot of time with customers, building a better mousetrap, really. The thing that I've been thinking about to grow our particular business is continuing to position ourselves as a thought leader in the space. So we have our podcast. We're doing our first State of the Union report for the rental industry. What's going on in the market? It's coming out in January. We're thinking about doing a user conference next year as well. So I guess the question for us is, now that the product's working, we think we have a great product and a great offering. How do we continue to position our brand as a thought leader, an innovative thought leader in the space? So we've got some things I just mentioned that we're working on, but I think now going into year 5, and we've got a great product that works and a great team, how do we continue to position our brand as the leader? And that's my question for your audience is, how do we do that? And I've got some thoughts there, but that's something I continue to think about.
Perfect. Well, when we cut this out and make the reel for it, we'll post it up and we'll see what we get off LinkedIn. So thank you very much, Kyle, for being on the show, and really appreciate your time, and have a wonderful day.